Inside the emperor's palace, passion wasn't private, it was regulated. Every touch, every night, every breath between silk sheets followed rules older than dynasties. Break them, and the punishment wasn't shame, it was death. Today, we'll unlock the secret bedroom codes of the Imperial Harem, rituals so precise that even love became an act of politics. And hidden inside those rituals lies the true story of how empires survived or collapsed behind closed doors. Here's a challenge. Imagine your own private life dictated by strict rules. Who, when, and even how. Would you obey for survival or risk everything to rebel? Tell me honestly. I'm curious which side you'd choose. Imagine your most private moments scheduled on a state calendar. That was reality for emperors, where intimacy followed a timetable as strict as military campaigns. Each concubine's turn was written, checked, and enforced, rotating women like officials at court. The idea wasn't pleasure alone, it was dynasty management, ensuring equal chances of pregnancy, preventing jealous rivalries, and showing that even desire bowed to bureaucracy. Ancient records show entire scrolls filled with names, dates, and astrological symbols to decide when and who could approach the imperial bed. To miss your scheduled night wasn't just personal disappointment, it meant a lost chance to bear an heir or a slide into political obscurity. One missed entry could alter succession itself. In the harem, intimacy was paperwork. Privacy ended at the bedroom door. Eunuchs, men castrated to remove temptation, stood as guardians of the emperor's chambers. They managed entrances, verified preparations, and sometimes even recorded outcomes. For the emperor, they were trusted eyes. For concubines, they were silent jailers. Why such scrutiny? Because power shifted with pregnancies, and a single unverified encounter could produce claims of illegitimate heirs. Historical accounts describe eunuchs escorting women from bathhouses to chambers, noting exact times, and sealing chamber doors once the emperor entered. Their presence meant no whisper, no movement, no act escaped notice. Yet these eunuchs also became kingmakers. Loyal to no bloodline, they wielded secrets sharper than swords. Information was their real weapon. Before a concubine could even think of approaching the emperor's chambers, she had to pass through a ritual of water. These weren't simple baths, they were ceremonial purifications. Hours of soaking in perfumed water, scrubbing with rare herbs, oils massaged into the skin in exact sequences. In some dynasties, the bathing ritual began at sunset and ended near midnight. Every movement was symbolic, washing away bad luck, impurity, or evil spirits. But beneath the ritual was control. A woman too sick, too unkempt, or simply unprepared could be dismissed. In this world, beauty wasn't vanity, it was duty. Records from the Qing and Ottoman courts even show dedicated attendants timing each step of the bath, ensuring no gesture was skipped. Miss one herb and you missed the night. Cleanliness wasn't optional, it was political. Step inside the imperial bedchamber, and the first thing you'd notice isn't who's there, it's what's beneath them. The sheets, always silk, often red, sometimes gold-threaded. In some empires, each concubine had to bring her own ceremonial bed cover, embroidered with dragons, phoenixes, or fertility symbols. But this wasn't just luxury, it was law. Certain scents were applied to the sheets: musk, amber, rose oil. The belief? Scents aligned the body's energy with cosmic harmony. In some cases, the emperor could reject a concubine based on scent alone, but more surprisingly, silk sheets were replaced after every encounter to avoid spiritual contamination. There are even records of imperial inspectors, yes, inspectors, who verified the fabrics. Desire was choreographed in fabric and fragrance. Not every hour was equal inside the harem. Certain times of night were considered unlucky, while others were believed to guarantee fertility, prosperity, or even military success for the empire. Astrologers and court scholars pored over calendars, noting which minutes were open and which were strictly forbidden. If a concubine's turn fell during an inauspicious hour, her night could be delayed or denied entirely. Some records describe emperors waiting until the precise stroke of midnight before entering the chamber, believing the stars dictated his dynasty's strength. Timing wasn't a preference, it was law. Break the hour, and the act itself was seen as dangerous, even treasonous. Time was destiny in the harem. Even before a concubine spoke a word, her clothing had already passed judgment. Gowns weren't chosen for beauty alone. They signalled rank, fertility, and the emperor's favour. Some dynasties required red silk gowns embroidered with gold threads, while others demanded sheer veils to symbolise submission. Shoes too were regulated. Embroidered slippers for favoured consorts, plain cloth for those still waiting their turn. Jewellery was carefully measured, with pearls representing purity and jade symbolising virtue. More tellingly, a concubine who appeared in the wrong gown could be barred from the emperor's presence entirely. Imagine dressing not for yourself, but for the dynasty's survival. And these gowns weren't chosen by the women, they were assigned. Clothing became chains disguised as silk. In the Imperial Harem, a pregnancy wasn't just personal, it was political warfare. A single confirmed heir could shift alliances, topple rivals, or even decide the fate of an empire. That's why strict rules surrounded conception. Concubines were carefully tracked, their cycles recorded, their diets controlled, and their activities monitored. Some were forbidden from certain foods or herbs believed to hinder fertility, while others were forced to drink special tonics before meeting the emperor. And if a woman became pregnant, her status instantly transformed. She was guarded more closely than generals, her chambers filled with attendants, her every movement restricted. The risk of poisoning or accidental falls was so high that eunuchs often tested her meals first. A womb became a weapon of state. When the emperor visited his harem, silence wasn't requested. It was commanded. Entire courtyards fell still. Musicians stopped playing, lamps dimmed, even footsteps were muffled with fabric. Why? Because noise was seen as both disrespectful and dangerous. Any disturbance could be read as a sign of ill omen. Eunuchs enforced this rule mercilessly. If a servant coughed, she risked flogging. If a concubine whispered at the wrong time, she could lose her turn forever. Silence became a language of its own. It signalled obedience, reverence, and fear. In Ottoman records, the silent path was the route concubines took toward the emperor's chambers, guarded by torchlight and absolute quiet. No word, no gesture, no sound was permitted. Silence was survival. Few rules were as absolute as this. No one entered the emperor's chamber uninvited. To intrude, even by mistake, was often a death sentence. Guards and eunuchs enforced this with ruthless precision. If a concubine appeared outside her scheduled night, suspicion fell instantly. Was she plotting, bribing, or attempting to seduce her way into power? Historical accounts from the Ming court describe intruders executed without trial, their families punished as accomplices. In the Ottoman harem, breaking boundaries could mean being drowned in silk sacks and thrown into the Bosphorus. Behind the silk curtains, desire wasn't free, it was fenced by terror. In the harem, curiosity killed more than cats. Virginity wasn't a matter of trust, it was documented. Before joining the harem, concubines endured humiliating inspections by midwives and attendants to verify purity. Some dynasties recorded results in official ledgers, turning intimate details into public data for the court. A concubine who failed inspection wasn't simply dismissed. She was branded unworthy, sometimes sold back into slavery. But these inspections didn't end once inside. Rumours suggest that surprise checks happened throughout a woman's service, ensuring loyalty and preventing secret affairs. In truth, they were less about chastity and more about control. By making women's bodies subject to constant scrutiny, the palace reinforced that they were property, not partners. Purity was paperwork. In the harem, scent wasn't just decoration, it was declaration. The emperor often marked his favoured consorts with specific perfumes. assigning each woman a fragrance that announced her rank. Musk, ambergris, or rare floral oils weren't chosen for pleasure alone, but to prevent confusion. A concubine who smelled of jasmine might be known as the emperor's chosen for that month, while another wearing rose oil was relegated to waiting. In some courts, attendants rubbed these perfumes directly into the skin so the emperor could identify favourites in darkness. Scent became both an intimate connection and a public signal, separating the chosen from the overlooked. Perfume was power. A concubine's diet was more regulated than a soldier's rations. Before entering the emperor's chambers, she was forbidden from eating heavy foods, garlic or onions, anything thought to spoil the breath or cloud the body's energy. Some dynasties demanded fasting for hours before the encounter, claiming it heightened purity and discipline. Meals were prepared by trusted cooks, then checked by eunuchs to prevent poisoning or sabotage. There are even records of women punished for secretly eating sweets before their night, as sugar was thought to weaken the bloodline. Food wasn't nourishment, it was surveillance. Appetite became obedience. Not even the emperor could escape the stars. Court astrologers determined the right nights for intimacy, aligning encounters with the movements of the moon and planets. Some evenings were declared fertile, others cursed. A concubine might be chosen not because of beauty or favour, but because Jupiter was in harmony with her birth sign. In China's Ming dynasty, records show elaborate star charts used to map which woman was most cosmically aligned for an heir. In the Ottoman court, horoscopes were consulted before every major union, ensuring no child was born under unlucky omens. This wasn't superstition alone, it was insurance for the dynasty. If an heir was born on an unlucky night, the empire's stability could be questioned. Destiny was written in the sky. Inside the harem, intimacy was not free-flowing passion, it was ritual precision. Many courts enforced the rule of one touch, where concubines were forbidden from initiating any physical gesture beyond what the emperor commanded. A hand on the arm, a playful laugh, even brushing against him uninvited could mean punishment. Why? Because boundaries preserved hierarchy. The emperor acted, others received. This stripped women of agency, reducing intimacy to performance. Yet ironically, some emperors relied on these rules to maintain an image of control they did not always feel. Breaking the rule didn't just offend the emperor, it upset the balance of the court. Touch was tyranny, and in the Imperial Harem, affection wasn't spoken, it was handed over in objects. A ring, a carved jade pendant, a silk ribbon, even a flower from the palace gardens could determine a woman's fortune. These gifts weren't simply romantic gestures, they were political signals. A token meant more nights in the emperor's chamber, more influence over court affairs, and higher status among rivals. Some concubines wore these items openly, flaunting their position, while others hid them out of fear of jealousy or sabotage. In Qing China, a single red silk sash draped over a door signalled the emperor's choice for that night, sending waves of envy through the harem. A gift could crown or destroy you. Sometimes the greatest display of authority was not in granting attention, but in withholding it. A concubine ignored by the emperor faced a punishment worse than exile: irrelevance. Nights without summons became weeks, then years, until her beauty faded and her influence vanished. In the Ottoman harem, the forgotten women lived in gilded rooms, yet carried the weight of silence, knowing each missed visit dimmed their legacy. Absence, paradoxically, was the emperor's sharpest weapon. It kept women desperate for his favour, and rivals constantly on edge. Neglect shaped behaviour as much as reward. Absence was control. The harem was never truly silent. Behind the curtains and carved screens, whispers travelled faster than official decrees. Gossip became currency. Who had been summoned? What token had been given? Which concubine looked pale or sick? All of it carried through corridors by servants, attendants, and eunuchs. These rumours weren't idle chatter. They shaped alliances, planted seeds of jealousy, and even reached the emperor's ears. Some women rose not by beauty, but by mastering the art of information, feeding him secrets that painted rivals in shadow. Others fell because a whisper, true or not, destroyed their standing. In the harem, rumour was a weapon. Even the most private nights ended with paperwork. After the emperor's visit, eunuchs recorded what had occurred, down to times and outcomes. These reports, sealed and stored, weren't meant for gossip. They were archives of dynasty. Why? Because legitimacy depended on proof. If a child was conceived, the empire needed records showing the encounter was sanctioned and witnessed. Some chronicles from the Ming dynasty describe ledgers filled with dates of visits, concubine names, and astrological notes. For the women, this stripped intimacy of its meaning. Their bodies were data points in an imperial ledger, and yet these records still shape how historians know about harem life today. Love was logged like law. In every harem, one truth never changed. Favorites ruled. A single woman elevated by the emperor's affection could shift the balance of power more than ministers or generals. Her family might suddenly rise in wealth. Her rivals might face exile, and even policy decisions could bend toward her influence. But favoritism was a double-edged sword. What crowned a woman today painted a target on her tomorrow. Rivals whispered poison into the emperor's ear, servants tampered with perfumes or meals, and jealousy simmered into plots. The higher she rose, the steeper the fall if she slipped. In the Ottoman court, favourite consorts sometimes wielded enough influence to sway succession itself, until a new face stole the emperor's eye. Favour was as dangerous as it was powerful. Not every punishment came with chains. For many concubines, exile meant being forgotten inside the palace walls. Removed from the emperor's attention, they were banished to quiet wings of the harem, still fed, still clothed, but stripped of purpose. Days stretched into years, their beauty fading as younger rivals claimed the spotlight. Some turned bitter, others turned to religion, retreating into prayer to escape despair. Ottoman records speak of entire, old concubine quarters, where women once adored by the emperor lived out their days in silence. It was a punishment without blood, but heavy with cruelty. Life continued, but meaning drained away. Neglect was a slow death. The harem's rules didn't end when a concubine's life did. In many dynasties, widowed consorts of an emperor were forbidden from remarrying, condemned to live the rest of their days in seclusion. Some were confined to temples, dressed in plain robes, their luxurious lives replaced with quiet prayers. Others remained inside the palace, stripped of status, existing as ghosts among the living. Why such severity? To ensure their loyalty carried beyond the emperor's grave. No rival dynasty could ever claim their affection or children. In rare cases, women were buried alive with rulers, forced into death to guard him in the afterlife. The emperor's grip outlived his breath. Hidden in archives away from the public eye were the manuals, detailed guides that preserved the protocols of the harem. From the order of bathing rituals to the exact language of greetings, these texts acted as handbooks of intimacy, turning passion into procedure. Some dynasties updated them with every reign, adjusting rituals to suit the emperor's tastes. Others treated them as sacred, unchanged for centuries. They were never meant to be read outside palace walls, yet fragments have survived, offering modern historians glimpses into a world where desire was codified like law. For the women who lived under them, these manuals weren't books, they were chains of ink. Even pleasure had instructions. The Imperial Harem wasn't just a sanctuary of beauty or desire, it was a fortress of rules. Every bath, every gown, every whispered word carried the weight of empire. What looked like a romance was bureaucracy. What seemed like luxury was control. And behind it all, the emperor's most private life became the stage where dynasties were secured or destroyed. These strange bedroom rules remind us that power rarely stops at the palace gates. It seeps into homes, bodies, and even dreams. Intimacy was politics disguised as love. And as we leave this hidden world, ask yourself, How many of today's private choices are still quietly written by rules we didn't make? Stay tuned, because the next chapter of history hides just as many secrets.